Hi gang, Rob here. It's the morning of 15 September 2015 and I've got another from the sharpening bench video for you this morning. Not going to be a comprehensive review because the subject of this video, the Zero Tolerance ZT0452, is coming just a day or two after my full review of the ZT0450. The little brother, little sister to this knife. Both are Sinkovich designs, 2015 production of Zero Tolerance, the high-end division of Kai USA, or the sister brand to Kershaw. And this is not the just over 3-inch EDC version of the knife. This is the 4 1/8 inch bladed, full-on tactical flipper. And interesting, I think, that the design of the two knives is so similar. I mean, really similar, with two really completely different applications. This thing is a long, slender beast of a knife. It is not a sheeple-friendly EDC blade, not by a long shot. I mean, it's kind of hard to to grasp how large this knife is, but it's big. 4 1/8 inch blade, crafted of CPM S35 VN steel, titanium frame lock with ball bearing pivot, steel insert and over travel stop, tip up left or right hand carry, low ride pocket clip. Looks kind of funny, doesn't it? Kind of small, like almost like a lion steel clip, but it works. If you don't mind getting your pants pinched between screw heads and clip, makes it a little bit of a chore depending on what you're wearing that day to get fully seated, but it retains well, easy enough to insert and extract. I think really for the design elements of this knife, this full-size version kind of goes better with the design. Suited well for piercing, slashing, not much of a shearing knife. It's very light, lots of relief, cut out of the blade in the swedge, and the pretty thin blade grind for its size. And you know, the carbon fiber and titanium handle make this knife weigh in with a 4 1/8 inch blade at only 4.3 ounces. You know, ergonomics in a Saber Grip for an aggressive piercing action are really superb. In a hammer grip, this knife much better than the little sister. You know, the handle really excels. The design of the handle really excels in this full size, much better than the small one. The draw cut grip, very comfortable, and if you'll remember, those two grips in the small knife, the 450, were not particularly comfortable. If you're going to the reverse grip, you almost have to rest the thumb on the spine of the handle. Coming over the end makes a hot spot right here. Especially if you have a cut on your thumb right here. You guys might want to watch the video I uploaded yesterday. This savage cut, courtesy of this knife. This one belongs to my sharpening customer Lex. I had just finished, to tell the story, I had just finished this choil mod, and I grabbed something out of the car. I was in the garage at the grinding station and had grabbed something out of the car. I was getting ready to head back down to the basement to do the edge, and I wasn't really paying attention to how I was holding the knife, and somehow it shifted in my hand, and when I went to close on it to keep from dropping it, I did this. Cut myself with this portion of the blade right here with the factory edge, which was nice and sharp, just wasn't particularly symmetrical or refined, but that toothy that toothy Zero Tolerance factory edge had no trouble parting the layers of my skin. It was a cut that probably should have had stitches, but as you saw on the other video, it got the old super glue treatment. Anyway, If you refer back to my 450 video, you know that there's some issues with how the plunge grind meets the edge, thickness of the steel behind the base of the edge. With a 4 1/8 inch blade, with well over 4 inches of cutting edge, losing maybe a 1/4 inch of blade so we can have proper edge geometry all the way to the back, I thought was a pretty good idea, especially given another design element of the knife. You notice we have this swale in the spine with some jimping. In a Saber Grip, why is that jimping there? I don't know. Even in a 1-0 Samurai Grip, which is more comfortable on this knife, the jimping looks to be cosmetic only. But what if on this big long blade we wanted to make it into a small utility knife for some specific purpose, and we wanted to come forward on it? Look how the thumb lies on the jimping, the index finger tucking nicely behind the cutting edge in that forward choil, and now we have something suited for fine work. Thought the choil mod came out pretty well. And notice we have a consistently thin 16-degree secondary edge all the way to the base. Easy to resharpen now for its owner, without any twisting, turning, or contortions. He'll just be able to zip this down both sides of his sharp maker if he likes, redress that 19-degree micro bevel, and away he'll go. Let's see if it cuts. It ought to. Had a little angle error on that first one, made a little noise. Not the knife's fault, it's the user's fault. Oh my. She is a scalpel. I don't know if I had to cut myself with it after I sharpen it, whether my cut would be worse or better. Maybe it would have been a little cleaner, I don't know. Now how about this knife though in its tactical application? It is fast, and it does sort of like a bit of a push button on opening. It's so long the way that I naturally would grasp the knife. It doesn't really, I don't really feel like it's comfortable to be far enough forward on it to light switch it. It can be done that way. It's a very well designed flipper in that regard, but I sort of seem to bury the butt in the palm of my hand and then just sort of push button it. But it, like I said, it's extremely versatile, like most of ZT's newer flippers are this year. Good flipping geometry and ergonomics. I do have one caveat. If you are a right-hander and if your knife is new, it does have a detent ball that protrudes a lot and drops into the corresponding hole in the blade very near the equator of the detent ball. That gives it a very firm detent, so when you flip it, once it breaks that detent, it's going to fly open. However, I got to be pretty careful. My ring finger seems to want to go back here in the relief cut for the lock bar, and I really got to be careful that I keep my middle finger off the lock bar, which is a little bit difficult to do in such a slim frame because there's not a lot of material up here to rest on. I need to really be sure to keep my hand very far back on the knife to facilitate that. Because if I don't, if I come up far forward on the knife, which seems like a pretty natural place to grab it, and I exert any pressure with this middle finger on that lock bar, see that time it opened, but sometimes it gets locked closed. Now, training muscle memory, if you carry this knife every day, would it ever be a problem? Would if you're in a high stress situation, you need the knife for defense, would you just naturally grab it in a way that your hand has learned will not lock the blade closed, and will it fly open when you need it to, ready to present to the soft tissue of a bad guy? I hope so, but is there a chance that under stress you might grab that with a sort of death grip with your middle finger, and now you have a stick to poke him with? Just one of my little things I've got, one of my little idiosyncrasies, my pet peeves about the modern tactical flipper. When we started making detents that were that finicky, just to get knives to have great flipping action if you executed the opening perfectly, that's great, and it sells knives, but might it put your life at risk? Yeah, even some of the new Hinderer knives, 2014, 2015 production, have that same detent issue. My XM18 does. Not sure that I love that. But, if you come back on the knife and if you keep your finger pressure off the lock bar, it sort of helps to kind of wrap your hand around this way. Sort of approach the knife at a 45-degree angle and keep your hand rotated back. Sort of keeps you from exerting too much pressure on that lock bar. And some of you guys that are right-handed and handle more flipper knives than I do, you're probably watching this video going, what the heck's he talking about? I never had that problem. Well, I'm kind of glad I'm a lefty, because it's a lot easier to grab the knife in a natural grip with my thumb up here on the frame, and I'm never exerting any pressure on the lock bar at all. So I kind of don't mind being wrong-handed on knives like this, especially if they give me the option to move the clip to the proper side for my handedness. Again, to echo some of the sentiments of the 450, the knife is extremely well machined, extremely well ground, extremely well fitted. Just take a look at that blade centering. It's perfect. Take a look at that. You rotate the knife so it actually is what it is. Tip came out nice and symmetrical. Not a skinny knife at the tip, as you guys can see. It looks like it would be, doesn't it? It looks like long, skinny, lean. You'd think it would have a very delicate tip, but in reality, there's some robustness there. I kind of like it. I don't know that I'd carry this knife a lot because it is so darn long. You pull this thing out at the post office to open customer boxes to see what came in for sharpening, and people might scatter. But that's why we carry a traditional, isn't it? Are there perhaps better tactical options? Yeah, I think maybe so. If you're really carrying this knife in a defensive situation, I think that flipper issue is an issue. But for what ZT's niche has really become, I wouldn't say that it is, fail-safe, no defects, built like a tank knives for real military personnel. I think really their niche has become satisfying their market, which is guys who like to collect cool knives that cost a couple $100 or more. And in that role, it's a winner. And it does cut, guys. Make no mistake, the knife's a cutter. And you guys know me well enough to know a knife must cut if it belongs to me. It does have, as you would expect, KVT ball bearing pivot. Not going to be super strong, but you know what? It's a 4.3 ounce over 4 inch knife. It's strength, ultimate strength, was not really what they were after with this knife, were they? So I don't even mind a ball bearing pivot on this knife. What? Yeah, I think it kind of suits what the knife is, and it's not a bad knife. Very, very cool. How do you like that pivot, guys? I kind of think it looks better on the carbon fiber side than it does on the titanium side. I might have used the old hex head fixed pivot on this side, but not to be. But it does look great on the CF side. And what good looking carbon fiber it is. Thought you'd like to see my nemesis before I send it home to my sharpening customer Lex. I got a lot of his knives this month. That's not a bad thing. And that's all for this morning. Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Lexus 452 are sharp,